Welcome to the All Hoops podcast. I'm your host, Steve Inman, joined as always by co-host Chris Brito. Another big trade has been completed with Pascal Siakam heading to Indiana. Draymond Green has also made his return for the Warriors. So Chris and I are going to discuss what the Warriors' future looks like. We got a lot to get to, Chris. But before we get to that, how are you?
Hey Stevie, happy to be here on the All Hoops podcast. You know, I'm just stunned by the amount of potentially conference ceiling or conference advancing sort of level trades. Like the Pascal Siakam trade with Indiana definitely puts them closer to the top tier of the Eastern Conference. I still think they're with us and the Heat.
Yeah.
Um, but I love the trade for them. I think they had a lot of questions at the power forward slot. I mean, I thought they took a chance on Obi, but Obi probably wasn't the guy for them. He wasn't enough of a two-way guy. And Siakam's a great fit. He can do scoring at all three levels.
Yeah.
And I really like it. And he has championship experience, which I think is probably one of the things that this team is missing the most.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting trade. When you think about it, like you gave up three first for a guy who's probably the 25th best player in the NBA, around that number, three first, and then you got to give him $200 million to stay this summer and then say thank you for him for taking it. That's a lot. That's a lot to give up. That's a lot to do. But when you think, if I was a Knicks fan and the Knicks did that, I would be screaming. I'd be freaking out. I'd be, this is horrible. It set them back, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But if you're Indiana, you gave up two firsts this year in a bad draft, right? One future first, two this year. Are you really going to get a better player than Siakam in the next couple years in free agency, even if you have the money? I don't think so. And, to get a guy who, as I said, is probably, a borderline all-star candidate every year, 25th or so best player in the NBA, to get a guy like that who wants to come to your team,
Hmm.
that's significant. That's important. Obviously offensively, this is one of the better teams, not just this year, but ever offensively. The way
Hmm.
they run, like their scoring is right now the best of all time. Now, their defense is the worst of all time. And so Siakam, I think, will really help on that end. Obviously, they're never going to be a good defensive team the way they play. But at the same time, if he can help them make two or three stops down the stretch, a couple games a week, that's significant. That's huge. So to have that where I'm curious the fit between him and Turner. Obviously, I know we talked about it off air. Turner plays a lot outside, but at the same time, I think it'll work. I think this is a good idea for the Pacers, and I'm excited to see where they go.
I think to me, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said the Pacers weren't getting anybody anyway. It's not like, unfortunately, it's not one of those, it's not a big market team that attracts that level of free agent. Um, and they also secure his bird rights, which I think is also a good tool to in order to keep him.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think it's good that they got him now, where they can see how the fit is within that Pacers team. And listen, it may not work out, but they have an out if they wanted to. But
They don't really have an out though,
I
because
mean,
you give up
you're
three
right.
first round picks, you got to sign it. It's the same thing with the OG Anunoby thing. You gave up Barrett and quickly, you have to re-sign this player.
No,
Same
no,
thing go for Siakam.
no. I definitely see that. I'm just saying that you get a trial run of what that could look like.
Yeah,
I obviously think it's going to be really highly likely that they're going to re-sign him. But
it's a trial run, as you said, that you're basically forced to buy. So yes, it is still a trial run. You are correct. Now, in terms of the other side, the Raptors, right? I've been screaming, where are they going? They're a 9 seed every year. They compete, they play hard, but they don't seem to like each other. Then sometimes it seems like they're not playing hard. They won a championship now 5 years ago. And basically that entire team is gone now. Pascal was like the last core piece of that championship team.
Mhm.
I think they got a pretty good return for him. Three first rounders and Bruce Brown, who you can now trade before the February 8th trade deadline and probably get another first. That's
Yeah.
four first round picks for Siakam. I think they did pretty good with that and the OG trade.
I'm still convinced they should have done this last year. I mean,
Yes.
it didn't seem like they wanted both those guys anyway. It sounds to me like they have at least a similar package level than what they acquired.
Yeah.
And in the end, like this team like could have gotten more draft picks for a better draft, but
But like, I mean, that's the question. Could they have gotten better or more draft picks or more assets if they moved these guys a year ago? Based on the return, I'm not so sure. Now, as you said, maybe they get draft the same return, but in a better draft class. Maybe they get last year's draft class. And then maybe that makes a significant difference because so far, everyone you talk to is saying this is a good year to get out of this draft. This is not the best draft. We don't know who's going one, two, three, or 20. Like, we don't really, no one's really emerged in those spots, and they're saying the last time that's happened, Anthony Bennett went #1 overall to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Victor Oladipo is one of the better players in that draft. Obviously there were still some gems in there. Giannis goes 15, but at the
mm,
same time, that whole lottery was full of guys who immediately you knew couldn't play. And people are describing this class like that. And so if you're Indiana, you're saying, you know what? Do we really need two bites of the apple in this draft class? I'm not so sure. So I think good job by them. They were also able to keep Ben Mathurin, who they like a lot. He's been up and down this year, but if he can turn into a legit scorer, you have Haliburton, him, Turner, and Siakam. So overall, I like this trade for both sides.
yeah, yeah, me too. Do you put them ahead of the Knicks?
No, I don't put them ahead in the Knicks. I think the Knicks are somewhere in that 5-6 range. I still put the Pacers probably in that 6-7 range. I think they're kind of right there with Orlando and the Knicks, and maybe Miami. You kind of put that tier in there, but I kind of think the Knicks and Miami are probably the class of that group. The Knicks have the continuity. Obviously, Siakam is going to help the Pacers, but I'm not convinced it's going to be an easy fit to put him in there. I know you said he scores, from all levels of the floor, but he still only has a couple of go-to moves, and I think that might be a little difficult to get in there, especially with Halliburton still out, right? Like you want to get them getting that chemistry immediately,
Wait,
and
didn't he get upgraded,
did he
Stevie?
get upgraded?
I thought he did, but the point remains the same. Like I still think that there's going to be a
Oh, he
trade.
came back. He came back Friday night. He had 21 points and 17 assists. So no, he played in Portland, and good correction on your end, Chris, for me, because that's one of his better games of the year. There he is playing in the first game with Siakam.
Yeah, yeah. But you're completely right. I think there's going to be a grace period where like they both have to like understand each other. Um, but in terms of other transitions,
Yeah,
uh, Draymond Green is back with the Warriors. Um, I think this Warriors dynasty, if we want to call it that,
yeah,
like is sort of seeing its final days. I think, Clay is going to be a free agent. Draymond is appears to me to be a little bit wild card, to
a
put
little
it
bit.
mildly. But you still have Steph Curry, but it feels like this front office doesn't know or hasn't made any real attempts to fortify this roster in a significant way. So Chris Paul over the offseason, I don't really get the thinking in that. And now like he's injured. So how are you gonna get the most out of this club? And the West has really improved. You have teams like the Jazz, the Warriors, and OKC, you know, ushering in a new era. And then you still have Dallas, and you still have the world champion Nuggets. So how are the Warriors going to carve out a space in the playoffs? I mean, right now they're probably like a playing team or a playoff, like a late
They're a
like
playing team.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean it's tough. I mean, when you have won 4 championships, right? Like, does that stop you? Does that no longer give you the right to say, hey, Clay's not the same guy anymore. We're going to trade him. Or, hey, Draymond Green is acting erratic. He's got 3 years left at $77 million after this season. We're going to get rid of him.
Yeah.
Does that stop you from doing those kind of moves because those guys have built up so much equity in this team that you kind of let them go out on their own terms? Maybe. Like, we've never really seen too many dynasties end with a championship. Like, really, the Bulls was really the only one that ever ended well, right? And they all kind of acknowledge in terms of like they won a championship in their last year
Oh, got it.
together.
Okay.
And they all came together and basically said, we can't do this anymore. This is our last stance, right? Whereas Golden State, it looks like this is going to be more of a slow death where Draymond is just going to be around this team unless they decide, hey, this isn't working. We got to move on from him. And then if they do decide that, is another team going to be interested in giving you assets for him? He's in his mid-30s. He's coming off more. He's got a suspension this year, more games than he's played. He's going to be 34 in March. And I like what happened to Wiggins. Wiggins was supposed to be the second leading scorer on this team. We talk Clay's is not the same guy. Curry is still doing his thing, but we've seen time and again when Curry's kind of by himself on this team, they don't win. They just don't. Like we've seen, you know, that a few years now where, he just doesn't have any help. That doesn't mean they're going to be awful, but it means they're just not a championship team. And I think, when you're paying this kind of payroll for this group, it's really a championship or bust kind of mood. Now, I think they just got to take a direction. I think they got to say, hey, this isn't working. We're going to move on from Green and Clay, or try to, or we're going to say, hey, we need to go for it. We need to go use Chris Paul's salary and draft picks to go out and get that second leading scorer. I don't know who that guy is. I think Levine would be a terrible fit here. I
Yeah.
wonder about a guy like DeJounte Murray, but I don't know if he scores enough to make that the guy you want to go get.
I mean, a guy like him definitely injects like life into that team because he had no problem beating the Heat last night. He had a game
Yeah,
winner and like another
right.
one a day before. Um, they need to do something. They need to inject new blood. Like if I'm the general manager of the Warriors,
Yeah.
what I would do is I don't think there are any takers for Clay. I think I'll offer Clay like a very low deal and put the ball in his court. Be like, hey, like this is what we need to do. This is if you want to stay, this is what we're offering.
Like
But
he's still shooting from three at a very high level. It's not his old level, but he's at a 38% 3-point shooter. That's still a very good
it's
player.
that's very good. But he can't really guard the way he could,
No, we cannot.
and that's a liability when you have a guy like Curry. So, with all the Knicks flaws, like the Knicks know who they are, right? Like they purposely got OG because they know that RJ can't defend the way he has to. So
Right.
I think the Warriors also need to look at themselves in the mirror and sort of figure out like this is not the way we should do things if we want to try to get Curry another championship, which should be the priority of this franchise for as long as you get Curry.
I mean, I think the biggest issue with this team right now, we talked Clay, we talked Draymond. The issue with Wiggins. I mean, Wiggins is making 24 million this year, 26 million next year, 28 million the year after that, and then a $30 million player option in 2027. That is a lot of money for a guy who's averaging under 12 points a game at 42% from the floor, under 30% from three. He's been
And we still
awful.
and we still don't know what happened to him, right? Last season.
We do not. It was off the field something. He's really the only guy in this, not core, but of these starting players who's under 30. So he's really the only one that's not in a decline, at least in theory, right? So I don't really know what they do, but they got to do something. And it just seems very clear that this group that has won together before is not going to be enough going forward on their own to win another NBA championship.
Oh, for sure. And I think they need to move on from guys like Draymond and Clay. They just do. Like,
And you mentioned it,
yeah.
like giving Clay some kind of cheaper deal. The issue there is Steph, Draymond, Wiggins are making so much money that you're basically over the cap anyway, with or without Clay. And so if you offer Clay 18 million a year or 35 million a year, it doesn't change the fact that you can't bring in other players. And so all you're really going to do is save on that luxury tax bill, which is important for ownership, obviously. But at the same time, all you're really going to do is make Clay upset and probably bring back this same team next year if you even try to sign him.
Well, here's the other thing too. Like, they should do something with Kuminga. They should package Kuminga somewhere. Kuminga is a nice player. I
No,
mean,
I like Kuminga, and he's basically come out and said, I need more minutes. And when, he came out and said that, they didn't all say Kuminga shouldn't be saying that. They all kind of said Kuminga's right. And like no one really stuck up for their head coach. So it's a very strange situation that's going on there. This is his third year, right?
I
So
think
Kuminga is up for a contract this summer. And he's going to want to get paid as if he's a quality starting player because he's saying the reason I'm not a quality starting player is because of this coach and this regime's decisions. And
I'm not
I think
so convinced that Kerr is as good of a coach as we think he is. I think like I don't know. He's gotten obviously he inherited Curry. He inherited basically the same players that he has today, with the
yeah,
exception of Wiggins, the Pools, the
Paul's.
Pauls.
Yeah.
Like I've yet to see him really like develop one of these like other guys and like make a stamp in a way that's like significant in a way that puts this team on a new like level. Like you saw Popovich. I mean, it's sort of the same concept, but like you've seen Popovich sort of like win across different eras, right? He won in
Yeah.
99, he won in 2000s, he won in 2010s,
Yeah.
right? Like I don't know if Kerr has shown that.
Well, it's so early, right? Like it's been one core together. That is one. And, obviously the number one person you credit is Stephen Curry, but I don't believe Kerr has cost them victories. And he's still, a guy who can help run the ship. And you can debate whether he's done a good job of that lately, because I think that's fair. They've had so much chaos going on with them. But at the same time, that is to me, they have not lost a championship because of Steve Kerr. They've lost a championship because Draymond Green went nuts and got suspended. That was once.
That's
And then
fair.
the other ones, you won four
Very fair.
championships with this group. You can't really be like, well, they should have won more. Like
That's
this
true.
might just be the end. And I don't think there's really any specific one person at fault. I think it's just a combination of Clay
Draymond.
got old, Draymond went crazy, Wiggins, we still don't know what happened, and Kerr has not really made any adjustments in terms of incorporating those young players. But again, that doesn't mean he has cost them anything. It just means we don't know. It means,
Dude,
it has helped the situation.
how well prepared for the future they would have been if they would have drafted like one of the guards in that draft instead of Wiseman.
Haliburton, LaMelo,
You name it.
traded down. There was a lot of talk about like what the Knicks would need to give up to go from, I think they had 8 that year and they took Obi Toppin to go to 2 to try to get LaMelo because they need a point guard. They've always needed a point guard up until Brunson. And I think the talk was like Mitchell Robinson and like multiple first. And I think we were like, that's too much. And, obviously now you would go do that and go take Tyrese Haliburton to be set. And I think the Warriors would be a lot happier with Mitchell Robinson right now, even if he plays 50 games a year, than James Wiseman, who's on Detroit, I think. He's still in Detroit, who doesn't play there. So yeah, they haven't drafted well, and the guys they have drafted that they've shown a little potential just aren't getting enough minutes. And so they really just need to decide, are we all in? And we're going to go trade these young guys and picks in the Chris Paul contract for a second star, a second scorer, or are we really kind of going to try to embrace the future and we're going to give Kuminga 35 minutes a game. We're going to kind of ease up on Clay and Draymond a little bit.
Like that,
We're
like
going to play for the
you
future.
figured,
They have to decide, pick a lane.
like how is it possible that Steve figured it out before anybody in the Warriors franchise did? Like
I'm sure they're all having these discussions, but just having a dynasty causes so many issues in terms of like
I would like the
respect.
Knicks to have one of those issues actually.
Sure, absolutely. It's Julius Randle's been here for 19 years and he's cursing out fans, but he's won 4 championships, so we're not really sure what to do with him. Uh, that would be pretty good. All right, Chris, let's get to our final thoughts. Speaking of those Knicks, they are 8-2 in the OG Anunoby era. This is awesome. I'm really happy with the way they're playing. They're running in transition more. They're basically one of the better defensive teams in the entire league since OG came in. And it seems like they got their identity back.
Yeah, and I think the best part of this team is that it's just like the pieces fit a lot better than they did before. And the next thing I'm going to say is not a but. It is simply an observation of the current situation. My concern moving forward is putting a lot of miles. I mean, it's not any different in the Tibbs era, but putting a lot of miles on Brunson and Randall without another playmaker to ease them up in the bench unit. So it's just really evident. Like unless McBride shoots crazy threes, like it's gonna be really hard for this team to like generate anything positive, the bench side, against the much better teams. Like you can get away with that against like the Blazers or whatever it is. But
Wizards.
Wizards,
Yeah.
you really can't get away with that with the better teams. And even the Wizards the other night, like the Wizards were scrappy. And I think that we can run into issues if we don't get a playmaker soon, another playmaker,
Yeah, no, I totally agree. That trade
we should
deadline's
be
coming
able to
up. Go
find,
ahead.
which we should be able to find.
Yeah,
That's-
no, I was going to say the same thing. I think they should have no issue finding that guy. It's really just going to come down to what does it cost? You kind of everyone keeps talking about Jordan Clarkson. We talked about Jordan Clarkson. I think you like that move. I'm kind of warmed up to that move. But the Jazz are kind of almost 500. So I think they will be open to offers. They were open to offers with a similar record last year. But at the same time, I think it gives them a little bit of leverage to go, you know what? We could compete unless you give us a good first round pick for Jordan Clarkson or something like that. So I'm wondering if a guy like Malcolm Brogdon in Portland makes more sense. I think he might be the better player than Clarkson.
the thing is, like when I saw Brogdon play against
He
us,
was not impressive against the Knicks.
he
I
was
understand.
not
He was
impressive.
not impressive, but that whole team had a meltdown day. They lost by 35 against the Knicks, and then they go to Oklahoma City and lose by 62. Is that how he's going to play? Like, no, I don't think so. Like, he showed last year he could be part of a championship team when he was in Boston. He's been on,
Well, he got
quality teams in
injured.
Milwaukee.
Yeah.
But again, he's another guy who's always injured. So that doesn't mean you have to go get him under any circumstance. But I think, a guy like him, a guy like Clarkson, maybe a guy like Colin Sexton, guys who could start, guys who can come off the bench as be 6 man. Basically, you're just trying to fill that quickly role. And so I'm open to that. And I think, as you said, it'll ease up on Randall and Brunson, but only really slightly. They're still going
Yeah.
to be playing 42 minutes a game in close games, whether they should or
I
shouldn't.
guess I guess I see it more on the nights where like a Brunson is like the on Monday when the Knicks were playing Orlando. We were essentially winning that whole game, but you felt Brunson's um sort of
Yeah,
absence when it was crunch time, or because we just didn't have another facilitator, a real facilitator beyond Randall. So
right.
so that I think is inherently an issue when this team is like, what happens if Brunson gets injured? At least like with Quickly, you sort of felt like you even still had a chance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Brogdon is, shooting about 41% from three this year. He's had a good year in Portland. I understand he did not play well against the Knicks. But there are plenty of guards like him that could be available. Even a guy like Tyus Jones who can play make in
I love
Washington.
I love him.
I think it's coming down in Washington where they're kind of saying, can we actually squeeze out a first round pick? There's so many teams that need guards. Maybe. The Knicks have a lot of those, and a lot of them aren't very valuable first round picks. They're, ones that may never convey from teams like Washington themselves or Detroit that are lottery protected for the next couple of years and then eventually become second round picks.
Yeah.
So if you can move one of those guys, move one of those picks for one of those guys, I'm open to it. And then you kind of just have 2 months to say, how does this team look? How does this final 8-9 man rotation look before you get into the playoffs?
Yeah. I mean, if I were to rank them, it would probably be Tyus Jones, Brogdon, Clarkson. Sexton's probably not going to be available for cheap, so I'm counting him out. But that's how I would probably like rank them.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely fair. I'm wondering with the DeJounte Murray stuff going on,
I
I'm
don't
not
want.
sure if he's the best fit here, but I'm wondering if he winds up in LA with the Lakers. There's been already talk that the Hawks have no interest in D'Angelo Russell, right? I'm wondering, this might sound like a little bit of Knicks goggles, but I'm wondering if they would just let you swap Russell for our bad contract Evan Fournier and just kind of let you do that because Fournier isn't expiring. They can literally buy him out, whereas Russell has the extra year on. And they're both making similar money, right? And so the Knicks are basically taking on a year of D'Angelo Russell at 18 million next year. He's a guy who can come off the bench. He's a guy who could start. He could play make. He could score. I'm not really sure where he's at attitude wise these days. That could be an issue. But at the same time, if you can get him more or less for free, I think that also is an option. Should a Jordan Clarkson, a Malcolm Brogdon, a Colin Sexton be something you don't really want to trade a good first round pick for?
It's not a
And
bad
then,
idea. I just don't want
Fournier is the one that's kind of thrown into every deal, right? Because he makes that like perfect number, like that 18 million. So he kind of gets to be thrown into every mock deal, real deal for a star. All of a sudden, now next year, with him off the board, you're going to need to find a new guy who could be that role. So Russell could be that role where he's basically an Evan Fournier who could play for you. And so that would be something I would be interested in. He's still only 27 years old. Statistically, he looks pretty good. 15 a game, 6 assists, 40 from three. Um, I understand there's been some off the court stuff where it doesn't seem like he's the most liked teammate at times, but at the same time, I think he would be a good fit if
he's
it's
also
really
played with,
more of a giveaway.
he also played with Julius Randle in LA back way back when.
Yeah.
Um, I don't hate it. It's just is
Again, it's
is
almost free.
is he a Tibbs player? And I don't think he is. That's what it comes down to.
Okay.
Brogdon is, I would say, who was the other one we mentioned?
Sexton,
Sexton, Clarkson.
no.
I don't know.
Gunners. They're gunners. We're looking for a gunner. That's really what we're looking for. A guy who can score and shoot and basically say, hey, these 6 minutes off the bench,
Need a J.R. Smith.
these are yours right now. You go cook.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
And so that's never going to be a guy that Tibbs loves. And it's always going to be a guy whose minutes fluctuate based on the defense, based on all these things. You saw it with Quickly, right? And Quickly tries to play defense and is pretty solid defender. And his minutes fluctuate. I don't know how any of these other guards are going to come in and it's going to be much better. And then there's also the buyout market, right? I'm not sure the Knicks are going to be the top of the list for those buyout guys because, there's the Bostons and Milwaukee's and Denver's and teams, guys who are just trying to go get a quick ring. But at the same time, the Knicks are a playoff team in New York City. So I think that is an avenue to go get a guard who can score off the bench if that trade doesn't work out on February 8th.
yeah. Um, you wanted to talk about how awesome Jalen Brunson is playing, and I have to say, like, I watched the Knicks during the Marbury years, or yeah, Marbury years. Um, I saw Ray Felton. I saw Chris Duhon. I saw. I'm trying to think of other good. Alfred Payton years. Like Brunson, like is the best point guard I've ever seen on the
Yeah.
wearing it.
No,
I
I mean,
I can't speak to what it was before because I just wasn't like watching basketball like that back then. but he's just so good. He's just like I don't understand how he can like manipulate defenders being that small and like he always has like an elite touch around the
Yeah.
rim.
No, I mean, I'm with you there. He's definitely got that elite touch. It to me has become the second best season I've ever seen a Knick have. The first would be that Carmelo season where, he finished third in MVP. I think he averaged like 28 a game and won the scoring title. But to me, this player is is just amazing for one. And just 20 over 26 a game, 47% from the floor as an undersized guard, 43% from three, 6.5 assists. The turnovers is only 2.4 turnovers a game. That's very low for a point guard. So he's not turning the ball over. He passes, he shoots, he scores. He can score from all three levels, as you said before. And again, the only concern for me is just him getting injured because he's playing so many minutes. And I think he either is leading the league in charges or he's close to leading the league in charges for a while. I don't want him doing that. Like, I understand it's good for the team and, it helps keep him being attacked, right? Because if I can turn it over by just leveling this smaller guard, it makes me second guess leveling that smaller guard ever so slightly, and that can make the difference between scoring and not scoring. And so I think that has really helped him become a harder to attack player, which is important for his size. But at the same time, I'd rather him be getting attacked than have him miss 3 weeks because of a charge from Giannis or something like that. Like, I'm like, don't do that. Enough with the big guys running into you. We don't need that, especially in the regular season. Um, but they're not going to change. He's not going to change, and we love him, and we're very happy he's a Knick. And I think this is the second best season I've ever. I started watching about 15, 16 years ago. This is the second best season I've ever seen a Knick have.
Yeah. Um, and then we have RJ and quickly coming back on Saturday night. We're recording this Saturday morning. Um, I'm really excited. I hope to get a nice ovation. They were definitely a big part of like why this team has been so successful in recent years. Um, I just want to see that continue.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. It'll be fun to see the applause. Everyone's like, will they get an applause? Like, of course they're going to get applause. They're homegrown Knicks who got traded. Like, both of them played well, especially, at times. Neither one was a guy who wanted to be traded. They're going to get big applauses. And so it'll be nice to see that. And hopefully the Knicks can win that game and improve to 9-2 in the OG era. But Chris, do you have anything else to add before we wrap up the show?
Yeah, two more things. I thought the Nuggets beating the Celtics in Boston was an impressive like
Yeah.
potential finals preview. Um, very clear to me, it seemed like Boston had way more talent than the Nuggets did, but the Nuggets still had the best player on the floor, which is Jokic. And it was just so impressive the way like they were able to like rip apart like this really good defense simply like with Jokic playing post moves like it's the 1970s and 80s. Anyway, I just thought that was cool to mention. And then a friend of mine, she saw this clip of Dante DiVincenzo talking to um the the new Raptors guy that we got. Not obviously not OG, but his name is escaping me. Oh, Achua.
Precious Achua?
Yeah, Precious Achua. Um, where DiVincenzo was talking about his soccer career. He was initially he so I found out that he actually went to high school for soccer and then he transitioned into basketball. And then if it wasn't for that, like he'd be somewhere else right now. But anyway,
He's been very good for the Knicks.
he's
We're
been
very lucky he chose basketball there.
he's been lights out. And I think obviously the OJ thing, OG has been amazing. iHeart has been amazing too. But DiVincenzo's been
Yeah.
a great addition to the team.
Yeah.
Like, um, hopefully he can keep that like shooting like streak going.
No, I mean, he's been great. As you said, Hartenstein's been great. Hartenstein's gonna be a very difficult guy to sign this summer, but that's a problem
I
for this summer.
know.
Let's try to enjoy this season, as you always tell me. So that is gonna do it for us here on the All Hoops podcast. Thank you to our amazing, watchers on YouTube, our listeners on Spotify and Apple. We'll be back next week to talk about the All-Star teams, who should be on the All-Star team. Depending on when we record, the All-Star rosters may be out. But at the same time, we'll break that down: who got missed on, who should be in. Do the Knicks get those two All Stars in? They really should.
I agree. Bye, everyone. Thanks, Steve.